On July 27th, 2019, it was announced that RetroMania Wrestling would be pile driving its way onto the Nintendo Switch. I had been following the game's progress since it was originally announced on PC, but I must admit, I remained skeptically and cautiously optimistic about RetroSoft Studios' spiritual successor to the original WrestleFest. Every time new information came out, I had some positive thoughts, I had some negative thoughts. I couldn't really make up my mind what I thought about it. I just really wanted the game to be good. I wanted this company to succeed. For a lot of us who grew up playing WrestleFest, we have insanely fond memories of the arcade classic. It truly captured the WWF at that time in a way no other previous wrestling game had. Sadly, it was never released to home consoles. The closest thing we got was THQ's horrible mobile port for iOS and Android, which you can't even play on most modern devices. Just imagine playing WrestleFest with touch controls. They were planning releasing this version on PC, PlayStation 3, and Xbox 360, but it was cancelled. After RetroMania Wrestling finally launched on Steam, on day one I purchased it, and I have to say, I love RetroMania Wrestling. This is the wrestling game that's been missing in my life for quite some time, one where you can just jump in and have some fun. But here's the thing. I love a good pro wrestling game. What I really love is a great portable wrestling game. They are few and far between. I can't begin to tell you how many hours I must have played Game Boy Advance with Fire Pro Wrestling, making edits, and even hosting an edit site, which is still up to this day, at fireproamerica.tripod.com. So when RetroSoft Studios announced that they would be bringing their game to the Nintendo Switch, I got a little intrigued. So let's talk about the Switch version. The arcade gameplay is timing-based. If you've never played WrestleFest, head into Story Mode. It'll give you a brief tutorial on how to play. The face buttons are broken down into a light, medium, and heavy attack. Normally, these three buttons are a punch, a kick, and a stronger strike. There's also a run button, and once you lock up, this run button allows you to Irish whip your opponent into the ropes. The timing-based grapple system wants you to build up your momentum meter. Start with light attacks like a body slam, progress to medium attacks like a suplex, and then the heavy attacks, which are usually more signature-based. You can even build momentum up by taunting. When you have enough momentum built up, you can hit your finisher. Each wrestler has a variety of moves and their finishers, which allows them to feel pretty unique. RetroSoft Studios did a fantastic job emulating that WrestleFest experience. The gameplay is fast and frenzied and great for arcade wrestling action. The gameplay is phenomenal, but what really sets this game apart and really does it for me personally is that extra level of detail that RetroSoft Studios did with the game's presentation. RetroSoft Studios did a fantastic job with the game's sprite work. They did a great job capturing wrestlers' likenesses, and even put in a bit of extra attention to detail, including entrance attires. The move animations may seem a little stiff, but perfectly replicate that era of arcade wrestling action. The level of details in the arenas are also fantastic. The game boasts around 17 arenas, and in these selections, there's something for everyone. There's realistic but fictional arenas like the RetroMania Arena, the High School Gymnasium, Japan, or a familiar-looking ballroom. There's real arenas like the NWA Power Studio, the NWA 70th Anniversary Show, or the House of Hardcore Arena. While designing venues, it's clear that RetroSoft Studios wanted to have a bit of fun. There's the Too Many Games Arena, where you're wrestling at a gaming convention in front of some gaming podcasters and YouTube personalities. And hey, if you Irish whip your opponent into a convention booth, the ring will now match with that corresponding booth. Kind of neat. Perhaps you want something a little more zanier. Well, from the minds of Matt Cardona and Brian Myers, you can wrestle on the beach inside of an old-school WWF Hasbro-looking ring in not one, but two different arenas. That's not crazy enough for you? Try wrestling in hell in front of a crowd of skeletons with a metal band playing in the background. When it comes to selecting a cage match, how do you know which one's the right for you? Perhaps you like the old-school blue steel bars. Or maybe you're more of a traditionalist that likes that chain link in their steel cage. Or maybe you're feeling extra spicy and want to go to hell and wrestle in a cage made of bones. So the game plays and looks great. You might be wondering how it sounds. Well, here are some clips.
The following tag team match is scheduled for one fall and has no time limit. Introducing first, from Chicago, Illinois, the Road Warriors! Into the corner.
The audio gets the job done. Ring announcing is done by Josh Smirnoff, and play-by-play and color commentary are done by Ian Riccaboni and Colt Cabana. Well, I guess it's time I talk about the negatives I have with RetroMania Wrestling. But it's not super bad. RetroSoft Studios gathered a rather eclectic group to fill out their 16-man launch roster from all eras of professional wrestling. I understand that there are limitations on who they can sign, but it just sucks that so many wrestling superstars from the 80s and 90s aren't available due to being signed with other companies. Despite me not being the biggest fan of this roster, it has grown on me over time, because the fact is, everyone's just so fun to play with. But with such a small, quirky roster, there are only so many matchups you can make. I can't say that I've ever wanted to see the Road Warriors and Warhorse versus the BWO, or Austin Idol versus John Morrison, or Tommy Dreamer and Colt Cabana versus the Major Brothers, but hey, maybe you do. They also have plans to expand on the roster with DLC, with the first 3 wrestlers being Chris Bay, James Storm, and Curtis Hughes, and they have future plans to expand as long as their game is supported. Like I said, the roster grew on me quite a bit, so while not great, whatever, it doesn't bother me as much. Well, the next thing, though, does quite a bit. These might be the worst controllers to play RetroMania Wrestling on, and it sucks because I play a lot in handheld mode. There is a good amount of button mashing in the game. From locking up to grapples, to submissions, to pinfalls, I find button mashing on the Joy-Con to be an absolute nightmare. I think this could be more of the fault of the Joy-Con's design than anything that RetroSoft Studios can do, but it sucks. Playing on a Pro Controller is a bit better, but I do feel I've lost matches due to the fact that I'm not playing on Steam with my Xbox One controller. However, this may be down to personal preference, and I just don't like button mashing when I'm playing in handheld. It just seems like I'm going to break my Switch. What else do you expect me to say? I absolutely love RetroMania Wrestling. Just know, if you're going to play on Nintendo Switch, be sure you're playing with one of these instead of the Joy-Cons. It's an absolute must. But I've been having a blast with it on both Steam and Nintendo Switch, so I highly hope you check out their game, because RetroSoft Studios deserves your support. They made a fantastic wrestling game and a throwback to an era that's no longer there. Just remember, this is the pile driving critique where professional wrestling meets pop culture. It's good to be back.